This is the second part of the video on the Transactions of the Blavatsky Lodge, the book study, in which questions were posed to Helena Blavatsky and she answered them. So I have taken excerpts of some of the questions and answers and tried to divide them into topics and study them. So here the topic here is the higher and the lower mind. So let's look at the question first. We are taught that a man can unite all his principles into one. What does this mean? Answer. When an adept succeeds in doing this, he is a Jivan Mukta. He is no more of this earth virtually and becomes a Nirvani who can go into Samadhi at will. Adepts are generally classed by the number of principles they have under their control. For that which we call will has its seat in the higher ego, and the latter, when it is rid of its sin laden personality, is divine and pure. Now, to understand this, we need to know that in theosophy, we are considered to have seven bodies or seven principles. The thing that we are aware of is our physical body, as you see in the bottom of this uh, thing, our brain, our physical body. We are aware of our physical body and our brain, but there are other bodies which are in and around this physical body, which is what makes our whole lower quaternary. This is called personality in theosophy. The soul takes up personalities in every birth and it changes personalities every birth. But the thing that is more permanent in us is this higher triad. Okay, and that in that higher triad we have three components: the Atma, the Buddhi, and the higher mind. So this is the difference here. There is a lower mind which we are aware of, whereas there is something called a higher mind inside us, and that higher mind is very pure. It is the seat of our willpower for good things. And it is unlike the laden, as she says, a sin laden personality, the human lower mind, feelings, etc., which is full of desires and full of selfishness. That higher mind is very unlike this lower mind. So this is the key teaching in this, that the adept, the person who has um, developed himself, has been able to control all of his principles, his feelings, his lower mind, and his higher mind, and he operates from that higher space, which is divine and pure. He is such a being is a Jivan Mukta or a Nirvani. But the questioner asks, the higher and the lower, manas, are one, are they not? Answer. They are, and yet they are not. And that is the great mystery. The higher manas or ego. In theosophy, the difference is between the higher and the lower, or the permanent and the impermanent part of us. Is the personality is called the impermanent part, and the ego is called the individuality or the permanent part. So here the word ego is used. It should not be confused with how the word ego is normally used in normal parlance. So let me start again. The higher manas or ego is essentially divine and therefore pure. No stain can pollute it, as no punishment can reach it per se. The more so since it is innocent of and takes no part in the deliberate transactions of its lower ego. Yet, by the very fact that though dual and during the life, the higher is distinct from the from the lower, the father and the son are one. And because that in reuniting with the parent ego, the lower soul fastens upon and impresses upon it all its bad as well as good intention actions. Both have to suffer. The higher ego, though innocent and without blemish, has to bear the punishment of the misdeeds committed by the lower self together with its with their in their together with it in their future incarnation. So, what it's saying here is that both the higher and the lower ego suffer for all the misdeeds of the lower ego. It's the lower ego which does all the wrong things out of a sense of selfishness and vileness and misconceptions. But the higher ego, which is innocent and pure, also has to suffer in future births because of this action. The mystic name of the higher ego is in the Indian philosophy Kshetragya or embodied spirit, which knows or informs Kshetra. Thence, it is easy to see that it is neither Mr. A or Mr. B nor any of the personalities that periodically clothe the self sacrificing ego, which are the real sufferers, but verily the innocent Christos within us. Hence, the mystic Hindus say that the eternal self or the ego, the one in three and three in one. Here, she is talking about the Atma Buddhi Manas, which we saw in the earlier diagram. So, the eternal self is the charioteer or driver, which is akin to Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. The charioteer or driver is the eternal ego. The personalities are temporary and evanescent passengers like Arjuna, while the horses are the animal passions of man. It is then true to say that when we remain deaf to the voice of our conscience, we crucify the Christos within us. So it is our voice of conscience which wants us, which tells us not to do things, and that comes from our higher ego. So when we follow the voice of our conscience, we are following the dictates of our higher ego. That is what it is. Man is the microcosm of the macrocosm. The God on earth is built on the pattern of God in nature, but the universal consciousness of the real ego transcends a millionfold the self consciousness of the personal or false ego. Let's read that again. Man is the microcosm of the macrocosm. The God on earth is built on the pattern of God in nature, but the universal consciousness of the real ego transcends a millionfold the self consciousness of the personal or false ego. So I think this is pretty clear what it says, the difference between the lower self and the higher self. The higher self, as per theosophy, is like comparing the Buddha to a savage, and its nature is pure, peaceable, and gentle. So, if at any point you want to see whether your thought or action is coming from a good space, then see whether it's pure, peaceable, and gentle. That's a very good way to judge one's own thought process. So now we go to another theme, which is on dreams, and a lot of this book is on this theme. I have only taken a few excerpts. The lower principles are like wild beasts, and the higher manas is the rational man who tames or subdues them more or less successfully. But once the animal gets free from the master who held it in subjection, no sooner has it ceased to hear his voice and see him than it starts off again to the jungle and its ancient den. So here she's saying that when you sleep, the higher self actually dissociates itself from the lower self and goes on to do some things in its own realm, and this lower self becomes more like an animal which is uh, then does its own thing. It has its own dreams, its own fancies, and it's just like an animal in a jungle again. Now she's talking about the linga sharira. We saw in this picture that there is a fourfold body, and one of them from the bottom up, you see the word etheric. This is also called in Hinduism the linga sharira. So here she uses the word plastic for this word linga sharira or etheric. She says The condition of the plastic form is to sleep with its body. So the linga sharira, or the etheric part of our body, it is an electromagnetic part, which is about 1.5 inches over this whole physical body, which is the one which carries all our pranic currents. It is the one which has all the nadis and all that. All of that is going in and out of our physical body, but that is called the etheric body, and that is the word plastic she has used. It sleeps along with the physical body when we sleep, unless projected by some powerful desire generated in the higher manas. In some peculiar people can do have the power to generate, to push this out of our physical body, but it's very rare. In dreams, it plays no active part. It also, because it's also sleeping with the physical body, but on the contrary, is entirely passive, being the involuntary, half sleepy witness of the experiences through which the higher principles are passing. So, in this book, if you look at it, it's saying that the higher principles, that is the Atma Buddhi Manas, the higher Manas, is the one who's doing various things during the time when we sleep, and we don't really bring back the recollection of all the things that it has done. It might go and study somewhere, it might go and listen to somebody or talk to somebody, or things, or beings of in higher planes. But whatever it is doing, we in the lower plane are not aware of it. Sometimes some glimpses come, and that we think of as some kind of dream, something, but we really don't know what the higher self is doing when we sleep. The higher self does not need sleep. It is our physical body that needs rest. So this is something that this book is indicating about dreams. Now we go to another theme. What is the difference between an elemental and a Dhyan Chauhan or Dhyani Buddha? So the word elemental comes pretty much often in our texts, and these are the things that actually, before Theosophical Society came into the picture, were given different names in even in our Hindu text. But it is theosophy that actually brought these words like the elemental, and clarified what they meant. Now let us read the answer. The difference is very great. Elementals are attached only to the four terrestrial elements and only to the two lower kingdoms of nature, the mineral and vegetable, in which they inmetallize and inherbalize, so to speak. Let me now clarify this statement. What are the four? The elementals are attached only to the four terrestrial elements. Now, what do we call? We call them Panchabhutas, for example, in Hindu uh, terminology. What are they? Panchabhutas are air, water, fire, earth, and ether. So, in this, the air, water, fire, and earth are the four terrestrial elements which the elementals are attached to, and in that also only to two kingdoms, the mineral kingdom and the vegetable kingdom, in which they exist. Okay. The Hindu term Deva may be applied to them, but not that of Dhyan Chauhan. So there are these beings, which in theosophy are called elementals, have also been given the name Devas uh, in the Hindu system, but they are not Dhyan Chauhans at all. The former have cosmic intelligence, but the latter are endowed with supersensuous intellect, each of its kind. That is, this elementals have some kind of intelligence, a cosmic intelligence, but the Dhyan Chauhans have intellect, supersensuous intellect. Supersensuous means they don't have physical bodies, but they still have intellect, and each of them has an individual kind of intellect. As to the Dhyani Buddhas, they belong to the highest divine or omniscient intelligences, answering best, perhaps, to the Roman Catholic archangels. So the Dhyani Buddhas are divine intelligences, and they are possibly similar to the Roman Catholic archangels. That is the difference between a Dhyani Buddha and a Dhyan Chohan. A Dhyan Chohan is an intellect, whereas this thing is talking about being an archangel, the Dhyani Buddhas. Now, To understand elementals further, you need to know that, for example, sylphs are considered elementals of air. Salamanders are considered elementals of fire. Gnomes are of earth, and there's one of water. Undines, Undines. So these are the four elementals which are intelligences which reside in minerals and in plants. And we already covered that in the previous video, that every plant, including a blade of grass, has got an element, is an elemental whose physical body is that plant. So that's something that we have already read. Now, another theme is Manavantra. What is the real meaning of Manavantra, or rather Manu Antara? Answer. It means between two Manus, of which there are 14 in every day of Brahma. Such a day consists of 1,000 aggregates, or of 4 ages, or 1,000 ages of Mahayugas. Let us just break this up more. Mahayuga, as you may have heard somewhere, that it consists of 4 yugas. The Kre- uh, Kreta Yuga, the Treta Yuga, the Dwapar Yuga, and the Kali Yuga. So the first is the purest version, the Kreta Yuga. Then there is Treta Yuga, and then there is, or Kreta is not the word, the Satyuga. I'm sorry. The first one is Satyuga, then is Treta Yuga, then it's Dwapar Yuga, and then uh, Kali Yuga. Now we are presently in Kali Yuga. Now all of these have got a certain time period. The Kali Yuga is 4,32,000 years. Double that is Dwapar Yuga, so it becomes 8,64,000. Double that is some 17 lakh something, and then you have another addition of 17 plus 17. It comes to 4,32,000. So this is the configuration of what is called a Mahayuga. Mahayuga is the combination of 4 yugas. So one Mahayuga is 4 yugas. Now, what the first line says is between two Manus, of which there are 14. There are 14 Manus in every day of Brahma. There are 14 Manus in every day of Brahma, and a day of Brahma consists of 1,000 Mahayugas. So 1,000, 4 lakh 32,000, sorry, it is 43 lakh to 200,000. So it's like 43 lakh 200,000 years is the one Mahayuga. Now there are 1,000 of such Mahayugas in one day of Brahma, and there are 14 Manus in such one day. So that is what this first sentence means. When the word Manu is analyzed, it is found that Orientalists state that it is from the root man, to think, hence the thinking man. But esoterically, every Manu, as an anthropomorphized patron of a special cycle or round, is but the personified idea of the thought divine. Each of the Manus, therefore, is the special God, the creator and fashioner of all that happens during his respective cycle of being, or Manavantra. So it is this Manu which is actually creating the entire humanity, or all that goes on during all the life forms during his time. So he is that divine being which is creating life under him. That is what this word is. That is what the word Manu means, and it is a personified idea of a divine thought. So even that being is a sort of personified idea of a divine thought. And so, what is a Manavantra? The period between two Manu. So when one Manu is creating this universe and another Manu starts creating this universe, between that period is called Manavantra. So Manavantra is the time when there is life. as opposed to Pralaya, which is the end of the Manavantra. When the Manavantra created by that Manu is collapses, then it is the end of all life. So that is the meaning of Manavantra. Another sentence about Manavantras, the 15th figure, and this is what it means, this entire number. This is uh, 311 lakh billion years. Manavantric cycle applies to the solar system. So this is the calculation which is based on our the Mahayuga calculation. And I have made videos on this, which you can look at. One of the videos called Kali Yuga, in which this calculation of how this number 3 lakh 11,000 billion years was reached is made. It's very simple. It's not difficult to understand. This applies. This is the age, the maximum age this solar system will last. That is the age of the solar system. After that, it is going to die. So I don't know exactly how many years ago it began, and no, I have no idea of how much time we are left. But the total age of our social solar system is this 15 figure. But there is a Manavantra which relates to the whole of the objective universe. So just like we have the Manavantra of or the age of the solar system, we have the age of this entire objective universe, the mother, father, and many minor manavantras. So there are many minor manavantras, as in the manavantra of our galaxy, the manavantra maybe of a group of solar systems in our galaxy. There may be a smaller deaths and smaller collapses until the entire universe also collapses. And that age is different from the age of our solar system, obviously. So all this is very interesting, and those who like numbers can look at the video which I have suggested in my series called Kali Yuga to find this particular number. Next question. Is Manu a unity also of human consciousness personified, or is it the individualization of the thought divine for Manavantric purposes? So we just saw that she said that it is a personification of divine thought. So the questioner is asking, is this Manu a sort of a group consciousness, or is it in an individual actually working for Manavantric purposes? So, is he a unity of human consciousness? Is he lots of human consciousness combined together to become one consciousness, or is he an individualization? So, the answer is of both. Since human consciousness is but a ray of the divine, our manas or ego proceeds from and is the son, figuratively, of Mahat. Mahat is the universal intelligence. Vaivasvata Manu, the Manu of our own fifth race and humanity in general, is the chief personified representative of the thinking humanity of the fifth root race, and therefore he is represented as the eldest son of the sun, and an Agnishwata ancestor. So here she says that he is not just an individual, but he's also a group consciousness, and our own Manu, who's called the Vaibhasvata Manu, because every root race, now we know in theosophy that we have 7 root races which will be there on earth. So far we have already fully completed 4 root races. They came up and they all died. They were all had different bodies, different from the bodies that we have now. And they had certain qualities, but they all collapsed. The last root race was the 4th root race, or the Atlantean race, which is now under the bed of the Atlantic Ocean. And now we are in the 5th root race, which is called the Aryan root race, which had its beginnings in Central Asia. And that too, in a million years from now, will completely collapse and the entire earth will be reconfigured. So, all that happens, the 5th root race, the entire development of the 5th root race, it was the Manu who started it in Central Asia, a new kind of humanity, and then spread it all over the world. And this is the work of the Vaivasvata Manu. And he is supposed to be the chief personified representative of the thinking humanity of the fifth root race, and is said to be the eldest son of the sun itself. So he has an Agnishwata ancestor. So he comes from the dynasty of the sun. The sun itself is supposed to be the heart of a giant being, who is the solar system. The solar system's body is the body of a giant being whose heart is the physical sun that we see. So that is what it is. So it's all like we're all like these Russian dolls, one inside another. Just like our physical body, in our physical body, we have millions of cells which are each one complete being, and which are living within us. Similarly, we are living in the body of this earth, which is one big planetary being, and that being is living in the body of the solar system, which is another being. But each one, for example, our sense of separation is so much that we think that we are separate human beings, which we are not. And that is why it is said that it is because we are so aggressive with each other, we're so full of selfishness, hurting one another, that we are really hurting our own selves when we do such vile acts. So this is the meaning of the word Manu, and very nicely explained. Another sentence here is, as Manu is derived from man or Man to think, the idea is clear. See, the word man in Hindi represents mind, and I am tempted to use to pronounce it as man, but I think she meant man. So, as Manu is derived from man to think, the idea is clear. Thought in its action or human brains is endless. Thus, Manu is and contains a potentiality of all the thinking forms which will be developed on earth from this particular source. In, in the exoteric teaching, he is the beginning of this earth, and from him and his daughter Ela, humanity is born. He is a unity which contains all the pluralities and modifications. So actually, the way, if you try to look at the how analogous it is, that the entire universe also the way it develops uh, down to all the planets, the solar systems, the Milky Way, and all that is very similar to the way even anything develops in the universe. So here you have the Manu, who's a collection of everything. It's not an individual, but then goes on to developing individuals, goes on to developing single units. So that is something common. Now, is Manu a unity of human consciousness personified, or is it the individualization of the thought divine for manavantric purposes? Every Manamantra has thus its own Manu, and from this Manu, the various Manus, or rather all the Manasa of the Kalpas, will proceed. Let me read that again. Every Manamantra has thus its own Manu, and from this Manu, the various Manus, or rather all the Manasa of the Kalpas, will produce. So you have one, the main Manamantra, and then you have the Manus which come from that Manu. So that is what it is saying. As an analogy, he may be compared to the white light which contains all the other rays, giving birth to them by passing through the prism of differentiation and evolution. But this pertains to the esoteric and metaphysical teachings. But Manu is not really an individuality. It is the whole of mankind. You may say that Manu is a generic name for the Pitris, the progenitors of mankind. They come, as I've shown, from the lunar chain. They give birth to humanity for having become the first men. They give birth to others by evolving their shadows, their astral selves. They not only give birth to humanity but to animals and other creatures. In this sense, it is said in the Puranas of the great yogis that they gave birth one to all the serpents, another to all the birds, etc. But as the moon receives its light from the sun, so the descendants of the lunar Pitris receive their higher mental light from the sun or the son of the sun. For all you know, Vaivasvata Manu may be an avatar or a personification of Mahat commissioned by the universal mind to lead and guide thinking humanity onwards. See, to understand all this, the one thing is like science today will say that we have started from the mineral and then slowly progress to plants, animals, and then become thinking human being. That is what the scientific thinking of evolution is. Whereas the theosophic thinking of evolution is it's all top down. The first thing that comes is intelligence. The intelligence develops everything below. That is what theosophy is saying. So that intelligence is represented by the Manu, and he that intelligence itself is has its source in another higher intelligence, which is the sun in this case. So this is what is the theosophic teaching. Now let's go on to another theme. What relations have the elements to elementals? Answer. The same relation as the earth has to man. As physical man is the quintessence of earth, so air or fire or water, an elemental called sylph, air for air, salamander for fire, and undine for water, is of the quintessence of its special element. So the difference between man is the quintessence of the earth elemental. This is what is an important teaching in this sentence. Every differentiation of substance and matter evolves a kind of intelligent force. Every differentiation of substance and matter evolves a kind of intelligent force. And it is these which the Rosicrucians called elemental or nature spirits. Every one of us can believe in elementals which we can create for ourselves. But this latter class of elemental creation has no existence outside our own imagination. It will be an intelligence, a force, good or bad, but the form given to it and its attributes will be of our own creation, while at the same time it will have an intelligence derived also from us. Now, in this matter, those of you who study theosophy know that Blavatsky herself had an elemental who would do small jobs for her. So there are fascinating stories of how this elemental will go pick up things that she needed, sometimes a lamp, sometimes a book, a paper, so many things. Sometimes that elemental had the form of a hand, and in one of the places I have heard Alcott describe that something was needed, some a dictionary sentence page or something, and the elemental appeared as a hand and produced that paper under her desk, which he saw. So these things is known that that Blavatsky herself created an elemental which she used. So elementals actually are forces, and there are four different types of elementals, of which the first, of course, is from Earth itself, which are called gnomes. But we, as in this passages, she said that we are the highest elemental of the Earth elemental. Our physical form is so we have an intelligence, we have a form. Just like that, there are gnomes, but their forms are not something which is physically visible to us, but they also have some physical appearance and form which is seen by clairvoyants, but not physically actually seen by us because their physical form is made up of material which is not visible to us. So that is the earth elemental. Then similarly, you have the elementals of air, sylphs they are called. People who can see them think that they look like little fairies, and or undines of water or salamanders of fire. So all of these elementals are intelligent forces which were first originated even before the first mineral came into being. So they are the intelligences which were there even before the first atom was created. That is what an elemental is. And what is the connection between an element and elemental? Now is you can understand it, because by element she means panchabhuta. So this panchabhuta, panchatattva, which is the air, water, fire, uh, ether, and earth. The five are called elements in theosophy also, as in Hindu literature. So here, this part is made clear. Next question. What is really meant by the term planes of non-being? Answer. In using the term planes of non-being, it is necessary to remember that these planes are only to us spheres of non-being, but those of being and matter to higher intelligences and ourselves. I just brought out this part, but it is actually a sort of dialogue which is connected to many things in this book, which talks about higher planes. And in that one sentence comes planes of non-being. So, what do you mean by planes of non-being? Planes of non-being are planes which we have no privy to. For example, we have the sevenfold body, but there are cosmic planes which are higher than this sevenfold, seven planes of uh, which we are aware of, which are far higher planes, and they are also seven in number. And then there are, it goes on endlessly. These planes of non-being goes on endlessly, and they are people of higher intelligences can be aware and function on those planes. So she says even those planes have got some kind of being, some kind of matter, and we are not aware of what it is. So it's not like it has no matter, it has matter. Then the highest Dhyan Chauhans of the solar system can have no conception of that which exists in higher systems. That is the second septenary cosmic plane, which to the beings of the ever invisible universe is entirely subjective. So here she says that even the Dhyan Chauhans, which is the highest intelligences of this solar system, do not know what is there in these higher planes. The second septenary, which means first there is a sevenfold, which is our own seven planes of our physical earth, whereas that is a second septenary of the cosmic planes. There are seven planes in the cosmic with a K, cosmic set of planes. Even these Dhyanchohans do not know exactly what that is, and what beings there are in that invisible universe. From this, I gathered that there is a lower seven and there is a higher seven. But I also get the sense that there are even further higher sevens. So I'm not sure about that concept. That's it, and thank you so much for watching.